So we come to the balance scorecard. All right. So when I was talking about the financial objectives, I said they relate to hitting the financial or the money targets. Okay, we want to increase our profit by 50%. We want to increase our sales revenue by this percent, and so on and so forth. And most of the time, because shareholders want to be paid huge dividends also at the end of the month, they normally measure the success of managers or CEOs by financial indicators. Okay, so once the business or the company is making profit, is able to pay good dividends, the shareholder is happy. All right. The import of this is that because CEOs also want to be celebrated, there is a high tendency that they will concentrate more on the financial objectives at the mercy of strategic objectives. And so these scholars, Kaplan and Norton, came up with this concept of the balance scorecard. And the argument is that to actually measure the performance of a good CEO or manager, you don't only have to look at the financial objectives. It is important that you pay attention also to the strategic objectives. Okay, so if you were to take two managers, and the manager that was targeting financial objectives is more likely to be making more profits, paying more dividends, but there will be another manager B that is focusing more on, say, improving the technology of the company, investing more in advertisement to get more customer base or market share, investing in employees for them to become more efficient in their production and operations. Okay, in the short term, manager A will beat manager B any day. All right, but that is the short term. In the long run, the manager that focuses a lot on the strategic objectives will outperform the manager that was concentrating only on the financial objectives. Okay, but there is the need for a balance, because if you also focus only on the strategic objectives at the neglect of the financials, what will you be using to even engage in the investments in the first place? You need money in order to improve your strategic positioning. Okay, so these scholars, a very renowned concept, came out with a balance scorecard. Okay, so this balance scorecard is a documented set of objectives and measures expressed from the point of view of 4 key areas of organizational concern called perspectives. So to measure the performance of an organization, they came out with 4 perspectives. In other words, to measure how well a manager or CEO is doing, you don't just look at the financial perspective. Most times, the financial perspective is just a byproduct of the other perspectives that we have to be looking at when measuring the performance of an organization. And the 4 perspectives are: 1, financial perspective; customer perspective; internal processes perspective; learning and growth perspective. So if I want to find out how well an organization is doing, I don't just pick their financial statements and see the profit they have made and see the sales they have made and feel that the company is performing better than others. Okay, for a particular year, that company might have been doing well, but you have to also go to customer perspective. How well are customers satisfied or happy with the kind of products and services the company is serving or selling? You have to look at the internal processes perspective. How efficient is the company? Or otherwise, how competent are their employees in carrying out their tasks and carrying out the activities that they have to do in the organization? Also, you have to look at learning and growth. Okay, what are the kinds of investments they are making, the kind of investment they are making in improving the competencies and the capabilities of their employees? Are they allowing for training? Are they sponsoring them on training programs? Are there workshops being organized and so on? And also, is organizational learning taking place? I think we discussed organizational learning yesterday. So learning and growth perspective is important. Internal processes perspective is important. Customer perspective is important. Then we go to the financial perspective. Okay, so this is how the balance scorecard seeks to measure the performance of the company. Don't just look at only the financial, but the other three are very, very important to be able to tell whether a company is being managed well or not. Okay, any questions so far? Are we clear with that? All right. So this table here is basically an explanation of what I was trying to, or what we've been talking about all this while. Okay, so from financial perspective, the objective could be that to maximize financial returns to the owners of an organization. Okay, as I said, it's mostly about the financials, as the name suggests. So it could be measured by return on capital employed, payments of dividends to owners, cash flow, and all that. Okay. Then from customer perspective, the objective is to sustain customer relationships. All right. That is why this is important. You need to measure the company based on customer perspective to see to what extent are they able to sustain their customer relationship. Measured by customer satisfaction and delight index, repeat purchase patterns. Okay, when people buy from this particular company, do they have the tendency of coming back to buy from the company the next time around when they want to buy the same product, or they may choose another brand? That will tell you the extent to which they are happy or not with that particular company. Okay, brand awareness in target markets. All right, so when we mention something right now, some company will just jump at you, or some brand will just jump at you. When we say toothpaste, something comes to mind. When we say water, something comes to mind. When we talk about car, depending upon your financial muscle, some brand comes to mind. All right, so that is how to measure the customer perspective. Okay, internal processes perspective. The objective is to create and maximize value in the customer-vendor relationship. All right. We want to maximize value for our customers, for our suppliers, and so on, and so people that we're dealing with. So we want to look at our internal processes. How is it able to deliver this value to customers and people that we deal with? Okay. So it can be measured by value stream analysis index. Right? You remember yesterday we spoke about value stream. You want to find out whether you're spending time doing stuff that are valuable, or you're spending time doing unnecessary things in the organization. Okay. How well are you doing your lean production or lean working by focusing on providing value for your customers? All right. You can also look at value chain activities, whether they are directed towards providing value to customers. We can look at continuous improvement index. Are you constantly improving upon the quality of the products and services that you're selling to your customers? Okay. Then the last one is learning and growth. The objective is to motivate people and develop their competences. So here we're talking about the employees in the organization. Okay, so that is the essence of the learning and growth perspective. So it can be measured by recruitment and retention rates. How well are you able to recruit and retain competent staff? Skills and training index. How well are you investing in training and skills development? Employee conditions and job and their satisfaction index. Okay, job satisfaction index. How well are they satisfied with the current work that they are doing as far as the job is concerned? Okay, so balance scorecard, very, very important. So this is important because you can neglect any of these points below and do well financially. All right, especially the learning and growth. Okay, you can choose not to send your people to, like some of you are on steady leave and you are being paid by your employers and so on and so forth. That is a cost to the business organization. If they had decided not to pay that will go to improve the profitability of that particular company. Assuming it's a private company, of course, right? So if they neglect to do the things that are at the bottom, in the short term, it may improve the financial perspective. Okay. But as I indicated, in the long term, it could bring some havoc in the organization. Right. So after we've understood, is the balance scorecard clear? Have we understood what it means? I need a response. Are we clear with the explanation of the balance scorecard?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Maybe Evelyn is representing the class, so I assume that is fine. Okay. So after we've understood these four perspectives, the next thing is to see the linkages. Okay, and that is where strategy maps comes in. In a strategic balance scorecard, possible strategic causes and effects should be worked out to develop objectives and measures to review their progress over time. Okay, so the point, look at the last bullet. The direction of thinking our cause and effect influences flow. First from learning and growth, then you move to the next, and then finally to financial perspective. So we didn't just learn these things, or you won't just learn these things as a strategist for the fun of it. They have some relationship. And as a strategist, you should be able to connect the relationship. That is how best, that will help you. At the end of the day, all businesses are in there to make profit. Of course, through addressing the needs of people. But at the end of the day, you want to make money, okay? But there are relationships, some connections between these perspectives, such that as a strategist, you need to establish the connections known as strategy maps, all right? So it actually starts from the bottom up, instead of looking at the balance scorecard from the up to the bottom. So if you improve the learning and growth perspective, that is if you were to train or recruit and retain competent people, provide skills and training for your employees, that definitely will improve the next stage or the next perspective, all right? Your internal processes will get better. So once you invested in skills and training, all things being equal, your employees will be able to create value and maintain value for your customers, all right? Because they have been trained, they are competent. So the internal processes, how they serve customers, how they produce their goods, and so on and so forth, gets better because they have become competent. When that happens, you will be able to hit the next perspective, which is the customer perspective. Okay, because your employees are competent, they are able to do their work well, it leads to customer satisfaction. Okay, and because there will be customer satisfaction and repeat purchases, that then will lead to your financial perspective, where you'll be able to hit your profits and so on and so forth. Okay, so what is really, really important as a strategist is to look at the balance scorecard bottom up, where instead of concentrating on making money or the financial perspective, you should rather be thinking about the first stage, where you invest in learning and growth. And when learning and growth takes place, it will lead to improvement in your internal processes. Otherwise, the way that you serve your customers will get better. And if it gets better, customer satisfaction will improve. And when customer satisfaction improves, that will lead to you being able to make more sales and then meet all the other financial targets that you were seeking for. Okay. But if you focus on just financials, as I've said over and over again, there is the tendency that you will not want to invest in the other levels, especially the learning and growth, because you will think that it's simply a waste of money. In the short term, you may be able to make the money, but in the long run, it will work against the company. So strategy maps will help you to know the connections between the various perspectives in the balanced scorecard. So it begins with learning and growth. After learning and growth, it improves your internal processes and procedures. That then will improve your customer perspective. And then finally, you'll be able to get to your financial perspective. Okay. So how do we manage the balanced scorecard? All right. We said it's from the explanation, you can see that it is very, very important in order not to let managers and people just, managers and people in position just focus on money issue. The balanced scorecard must be managed well, okay? And these are the 4 parts. You need first, you need senior level agreements on the appropriate strategic objectives and measures to achieve the organization's vision. So you see that the byproduct is really the financial objectives. The leading indicators of actual performance in terms of meeting the vision is based on you achieving your strategic objectives. So you need senior management must come on board to define exactly what the strategic objectives are for the organization. Because once you hit the strategic objectives, the financial objectives will be catered for, okay? The scorecard is then communicated to the rest of the organization so that the incentives and rewards are aligned to the objectives and measures. So once you get to know what you want to achieve, then communication will be made to the rest of the organization with incentives, more or motivation for people to work hard to achieve the objectives in the balanced scorecard. Okay. The scorecard is then used as the base for deciding strategic initiatives such as projects. So if it is not in the balanced scorecard as one of the strategic issues, you cannot be setting projects in that particular direction. If you remember the benefits of objectives, all right, we said it helps in allocating resources. It helps in deciding the priorities of the organization. So that is where this one is coming from. Once we get to know our strategic objectives, we can then have projects based on the strategic objectives that we want to achieve. Okay. The final part is the provision of feedback to enable senior managers to evaluate and learn how the objectives and measures are working and to test their assumptions against the critical success factors. So basically, the last stage is to evaluate and find out whether our balanced scorecard is helping us to achieve our strategic objectives and so on and so forth. All right. So it's very, very important. And normally, I want to personalize these things for you for it to sink in. All right. So those days in which you had to leave your workplace and come to campus, and I'm sure you'll still be coming. Okay. And even for just your fees, if you don't even come, you still have to pay fees. The time that you currently are online learning or listening to this lecture, it is possible you could have used the same time to make money. Or a colleague that is not on this program is probably making money today or right now as we speak, whilst you are here studying. In the short term, what it means is that the person is likely to make more money than you, all things being equal. Okay. But if we assume that with higher certificates, you could get better opportunities, in the long run, if you persist and complete this program, it is possible you might get certain appointment where the reward and incentive will surpass everything that your other colleague might be getting right now. Okay. So whatever is happening now is a strategic decision that you've taken to invest in the strategic objectives, which is about educating yourself. In the short term, financially, you'll feel it, all right? You have to pay the fees. You have to come to campus and pay for accommodation. You have to buy books and all that. All this will eat into your money. But all things being equal, in the long run, you should perform better financially than somebody who did not invest in this type of education or investment. Okay, so that will help you to understand the balanced scorecard issue that we're talking about. The reason is that after you've you've gone through the program. You should have learned something that will make you an employee or better at what you do than somebody who did not enroll onto that program. And what also means for the employer is that you can now serve the customers of the organization better than somebody who didn't come for the program. And because you serve customers better, those customers will buy more. And that is why they have to pay you more than somebody who did not educate or improve upon his skills and so on and so forth. Okay, I hope the logic is clear now. All right. Okay. So that brings us to SWOT analysis. They are very, very connected to all the discussions that we have right now. Okay, we said much earlier that you don't just set your objectives. Before we go to chapter 5, we had to learn about the external environment, where objectives and threats are normally found. We have to learn about the internal environment, where we can find our strengths and weaknesses. It is only by knowing these variables that we can set realistic objectives. So that is where this particular SWOT analysis is coming from. Okay, so you need to know your purpose. And purpose, you said, it consists of your vision, mission, statement, your values, all right? That will help you to set your strategic objectives. You have to know your external environment. You have to know your internal environment. In fact, a component of the internal environment is to know your present performance. Before you can set realistic targets or objectives, you have to know where you are currently. Okay, it's based on this knowledge. Then you compare your strengths and weaknesses. You compare your strengths and opportunities available. You compare your strengths with your weaknesses. You compare your strengths with the threats that are available in the external environment. So you do all these permutations before you can actually develop a good strategy to be able to achieve the objectives that you've set for yourself. All right. Without a proper understanding of your environment, internal and external, you will not be able to develop realistic objectives or strategies to be able to achieve your objectives. Any question? Are we fine? So chapter 6 going, we'll be dealing more with the objectives proper. And those topics, you will do the presentations, right? Because it's at the heart of strategic management. So you have to learn them very well and come and do the presentations. At the functional level, what are the strategies that you should be developing? At the business level, at the corporate level, at the global level, there are strategies that you have to know, okay? So there is another table, the similar idea, all right, based on what our discussion so far. So you have financial performance, you have your environment and competitive situation. The two together depend upon the opportunities and threats that you'll find in the external environment, all right? To be able to position yourself well competitively is based on what is happening in your external environment. Your financial performance largely will be based on what the competition is like in the external environment, all right? So to improve your financial performance and your competitive performance, you need to set financial objectives and measures. And we've seen examples of that. Okay, you need to also set customer objectives and measures in order to improve your competitive standing. And to be able to achieve these objectives, you need a proper understanding of the things that we've discussed much earlier. The pestle, the industry profitability and competitive forces, changes. Basically, understanding your industry is what you have to do in order to meet your financial objectives as well as customer objectives. Okay. The next two, ability to improve your core capabilities and core competencies, largely is based on the internal environment of the organization. All right. So if you want to improve the core competencies of your employees, you need to be setting objectives with regards to learning and growth. I think I've explained that, all right? The more you organize training sessions, workshops, and so many other training programs, you will be able to improve the core competencies. Once core competencies are improved, that will improve or enhance the core capabilities of the organization. So there you also have to set internal process objectives and measures to be able to know how capable your employees have become, all right? If we move it further, it is only when you improve your core capabilities that you can meet your customer objectives and measures. And once you meet customer objectives and measures, you'll be able to get to your financial objectives and measures. Okay, so your core capabilities and core competencies actually will define your strengths and weaknesses, whether you have them or not. Okay, if you are very good, if you have a lot of core competencies, then you're building upon your strengths, all right? And that will help you. If you have a lot of capabilities, improve upon your core capabilities, that will also be strength for the organization. But the reverse is also true, all right? If your employees are not very competent, then that really becomes a weakness to your organization. Or if you don't have a lot of core capabilities in the organization, then it will be very difficult to do the next steps that will help you to satisfy your customers. All right. So there's a connection between the strategic and financial objectives, as well as a proper understanding of your internal and external environment. Okay. So in carrying out a SWOT analysis in general, the following principles should be observed. First, be realistic as possible. All right. So the SWOT analysis about your strengths and weaknesses, about opportunities and threats. You, the strategists, will have to define what your strengths are or identify your strengths and your weaknesses. Okay. The tricky part is that you can choose to deceive yourself when you're doing the SWOT analysis. So something you don't have strength in, you can choose to call it a strength. Something that is not a weakness, you can choose to say is a weakness, or the reverse, okay? The opportunities and threats, you have to do the analysis and decide. So the point I'm trying to say is that you have to be realistic and honest as much as possible when doing SWOT analysis. If you think, obviously, to be you who would suffer if you are not realistic or objective when you undertake your SWOT analysis. All right. Distinguish where the organization is now and where it wants to be in the future. Very, very important in SWOT analysis. Basically, at the end of the day, you are thinking about your vision. And the only way to be able to achieve the vision realistically is to know where you are now. Where you are now is not a physical position. Knowing where you are now is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, knowing the opportunities that currently exist and the threats that your company is facing. In the midst of all that, where you are now, where do you want to be in the future? Okay, how well do you want to improve upon your strengths in order to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that may come up in the future? Okay, be as specific as possible to avoid ambiguity and confusion. So clearly name what you mean by strength, clearly name what you mean by weaknesses, clearly name what is meant by opportunities, and clearly let everybody know what the threat is. There shouldn't be ambiguity or confusion of these terms. Keep the SWOT short and comprehensible. I think this is obvious. Question several times to clarify the logic of why a factor is relevant. Very, very important. Otherwise, you will spend your whole time talking about issues and variables that are not really necessary for your organization. I think we spoke about that in both chapter 3 and 4 when we're dealing with the environmental issues, okay? I kept emphasizing that it is not everything that will be happening in the business environment that will be relevant to you as a business organization, because your objective and purpose may not be too connected. If you don't distinguish what is very relevant and what is not relevant, you spend your time on stuff that are irrelevant and probably at the neglect of things that are very, very important. Okay. Yes, any questions, any clarifications? I think we've come to the end of our lecture with regards to lecture 5.